It started with a single string of lights, a quiet street, a cheerful home, and one neighbor who decided that holiday joy was a violation worthy of punishment. Let me start from beginning. In the quiet suburb of Meadowbrook Pines, November always arrived with a crisp promise of peace. The kind of neighborhood where lawns were perfectly trimmed, mailboxes stood evenly spaced, and everyone waved politely while secretly judging each other's recycling bins. It was a place of silent competition. Who had the greenest lawn, the neatest hedge, the most compliant paint color, and for years, it worked like clockwork. But that year, the holidays were destined to unravel the illusion of harmony. At the corner of Cedarview Drive stood a modest two-story house with blue shutters and a tidy porch. It wasn't the biggest or the most expensive, but it had something most of the others lacked: heart. Every December, the house transformed into a glowing display of warmth, a beacon of color in a neighborhood that prided itself on beige uniformity. It was cheerful, never excessive. A wreath on the door, lights along the roofline, a few reindeer on the lawn. But to one person, it was unacceptable. Her name was Karen Lathrop, president of the Meadowbrook Pines Homeowners Association, self-appointed guardian of neighborhood aesthetics, and a woman whose Christmas spirit had expired sometime around 1987. Karen viewed herself as the protector of order. She believed that every light bulb, every lawn gnome, every garden flag needed her approval. And when those blue shutters started twinkling red and gold before Thanksgiving weekend, Karen took it personally. In her mind, holiday decor wasn't a tradition. It was an invasion. The first letter arrived on the morning of November 25th, neatly folded, stamped with the HOA logo. A friendly notice of violation, the kind that sounded polite until you actually read it. According to the letter, the homeowner was in violation of Section 4, Article B, excessive outdoor illumination, prior to December 1st. The fine, $75 per day until compliance. For most people, that would have been a minor inconvenience. But for this homeowner, it was a challenge and a warning sign of something deeper brewing beneath Meadowbrook Pines' perfectly manicured lawns. As Thanksgiving weekend rolled on, the house remained lit. The lights twinkled cheerfully in defiance, a soft glow against the cold night air. But the complaints multiplied. Some neighbors supported the display, calling it harmless and festive. Others whispered in the HOA Facebook group, aligning themselves with Karen's growing crusade. It wasn't about lights anymore. It was about control, about who truly ran the neighborhood. Karen began documenting evidence, photos taken from her driveway, measurements of light coverage, claims that the brightness posed a hazard to drivers. She even emailed the local power company, suggesting that the display might be drawing abnormal voltage. It became her mission, a personal vendetta disguised as neighborhood stewardship. Behind closed doors, she rallied her allies, a small but vocal group of residents who thrived on HOA politics. They met in kitchens, traded gossip, and drafted new enforcement rules. Each rule, each motion, was aimed squarely at one address: the house on the corner of Cedarview Drive. By December, the HOA issued a formal fine, $450 total, with a threat of lien placement if unpaid. It was an aggressive move for something as simple as Christmas lights, but that was precisely Karen's intent. She wanted submission. She wanted proof that she could bend the neighborhood to her will. What she didn't realize was that she had awakened something far stronger, not anger, but determination. The homeowner quietly paid the fine, not out of guilt, but strategy. On the surface, compliance was restored. The lights dimmed slightly, the decorations paused. But behind the scenes, plans were forming. In the following days, delivery trucks began arriving. First one, then another. Large cardboard boxes marked with words like projection unit, controller board, and outdoor LED network kit. Neighbors noticed but said nothing. Even Karen, who monitored deliveries like a hawk, assumed the issue was resolved. She was wrong, because this wasn't surrender, it was preparation. The story of the Meadowbrook Pines Christmas. War didn't begin with rage or rebellion, it began with quiet resolve. Each nail hammered into the roofline, each new wire laid in the frosty yard, was an act of defiance, a promise that joy would not be silenced by bureaucracy. As December 10th approached, a subtle buzz of curiosity spread through the neighborhood. The house on the corner looked different. Not brighter yet, but organized, suspiciously so. Motion sensors were positioned, timers set, cables hidden beneath neatly trimmed grass. And then came the whispers. "Did you hear they hired a lighting company? Someone said they're planning something big. Karen's gonna lose it." She was already losing it. Every morning, Karen drove past the house and felt a prickle of irritation rise in her chest. She hated not knowing. Her control, her illusion of it, was slipping. The HOA board met again mid-month. Karen presented her concerns, holding up printouts of neighborhood standards and maps of light coverage. She spoke of community values, visual harmony, and the importance of consistency. But even within her circle, cracks were showing. Some members were growing tired of her obsession. Still, she pushed forward, issuing another warning letter. This time, she added a personal note. Failure to comply will result in escalated enforcement and potential legal action. That night, the letter was taped to the homeowner's door. The next morning, the entire street gathered to see something unexpected. The letter, that pristine symbol of authority, was framed, hung on the front porch like a badge of honor, surrounded by a glowing halo of white lights. It was the quietest, funniest act of defiance the neighborhood had ever seen. Karen nearly drove off the road when she spotted it. And, for the first time, she realized she might have underestimated her opponent. The following days were tense. People whispered a trill box. The HOA thread exploded with passive-aggressive comments. Some residents begged for peace, others demanded enforcement. But behind all the chatter, something much bigger was being built, something no one, not even Karen, could have anticipated. Because the homeowner wasn't planning a simple decoration. This was becoming a project of scale, precision, and theatrical flair, the kind of display that couldn't just be ignored. As Christmas week neared, the house remained eerily quiet by day. No flickering lights, no music, no visible signs of rebellion. But after sunset on December 21st, everything changed. At precisely 7 p.m., the streetlights dimmed. A soft hum filled the air. And in an instant, Cedar View Drive exploded with color. Every inch of the house shimmered, synchronized lights dancing perfectly to music that echoed through the cold winter night. Animated snowflakes cascaded down the siding. Reindeer galloped in perfect rhythm across the lawn. A giant LED pulsed in time with a familiar song. It's the most wonderful time of the year. Neighbors poured outside, phones in hand, laughter echoing through the cul-de-sac. Cars stopped, strangers parked to watch. What had once been a quiet suburban corner was now the brightest spot in the county. And at the center of it all stood that framed HOA letter, glowing proudly under a spotlight. From her window, Karen watched in disbelief, eyes wide, jaw clenched. Her phone buzzed non-stop with calls from board members, reporters, and outraged neighbors demanding order. But order was gone. The street had become a festival. And the homeowner, the one she had tried to silence, had just made history. By the next morning, videos of the display were already circulating online. Local news trucks appeared by afternoon. What began as an HOA dispute had become a viral spectacle. The neighborhood that once prided itself on conformity was suddenly on everyone's holiday map. For the first time, Meadowbrook Pines was famous, not for its tidiness, but for its rebellion. Karen's mission had backfired spectacularly. But she wasn't finished yet. Because if there was one thing stronger than her hatred for Christmas lights, it was her hatred for losing control, and what she did next would take the neighborhood war to an entirely new level. In the days following the viral explosion, Meadowbrook Pines was no longer the quiet suburb it once was. Cars lined the narrow streets every evening. Families in matching pajamas spilled out of minivans to take photos. Teenagers brought hot chocolate and Bluetooth speakers. The air smelled of cinnamon, diesel exhaust, and rebellion. The once ordinary corner of Cedarview Drive had become a holiday destination. News anchors called it the brightest house in the state. Local radio stations mentioned it between songs. Someone even created a Facebook event, Lights of Meadowbrook Pines, the show that Karen tried to cancel. But while the rest of the town basked in the glow, Karen Lathrop seethed in silence. She watched from behind her lace curtains as strangers trampled her perfect lawn to get a better view. Her phone buzzed constantly, residents complaining about traffic, noise, and blocked driveways. To Karen, it wasn't a light show. It was anarchy, wrapped in twinkle lights. By the third night, she'd had enough. Karen began documenting everything again, this time. Not for the HOA's records, but for escalation. She filed police reports for noise disturbances. She emailed the city's zoning department about unauthorized event activity. She even reached out to the local newspaper with an anonymous tip about unsafe electrical conditions. But none of it stuck. The homeowner had done everything by the book: permits for temporary displays, safety inspections, even crowd control volunteers from a local church. Every attempt Karen made to shut it down bounced back like a bad Christmas card. And that made her furious. She called an emergency HOA board meeting, her voice shaking with a mix of outrage and desperation. The agenda: community standards and public safety. But everyone knew it was about the lights. Inside the sterile HOA clubhouse under flickering fluorescent lights, Karen laid out her case. She described the chaos, the parking issues, the supposed decline in property values. She brandished printouts of Facebook posts and grainy photos as evidence. Her voice rose as she spoke, echoing off the walls, each word laced with venom. But as she looked around the room, she noticed something she hadn't expected: hesitation. Some board members exchanged glances. A few even smirked. Because deep down, even they knew the truth. The lights had brought life back to Meadowbrook Pines. Families were smiling again. Kids were playing outside. Strangers were meeting, talking, laughing, things that hadn't happened in years. The neighborhood had become a community again, even if it had taken one defiant homeowner and a furious HOA president to make it happen. Still, Karen pressed on. When logic failed, she turned to intimidation. She drafted new emergency bylaws, limits on seasonal lighting intensity, curfew hours for decorative sound systems, and visitor parking restrictions. Each rule was laser-focused on one address. Within 48 hours, the new rules passed, barely. It was a hollow victory, but to Karen, it was a triumph. The next day, the homeowner received a notice thicker than a phone book. New violations, hefty fines, threats of legal action if the display wasn't dismantled immediately. But the timing couldn't have been worse. Because the display had just hit its peak. By now, it wasn't just a light show, it was a full production. Lasers, synchronized music, even projection mapping that turned the house into a glowing storybook. The homeowner had partnered with local artists and engineers, turning Cedarview Drive into a mini Times Square. Crowds grew by the hundreds. Vendors showed up with food carts. A local coffee shop sponsored free cocoa nights. Every evening at 7 o'clock sharp, the lights danced and the crowd cheered. And every night, Karen watched her composure crumble. Her reports to the police grew frantic. Her HOA emails became rants. She began driving slowly past the house, taking videos through her windshield. On more than one occasion, she stopped her car in the middle of the street, honking furiously at the families gathered there. Soon, her name and face became known. Someone recognized her from a neighborhood meeting and posted a meme. Karen versus Christmas. It spread like wildfire. Suddenly, the HOA president was a local celebrity for all the wrong reasons. News outlets that once ignored her calls now covered her as the woman trying to cancel Christmas. And that's when things started spiraling out of control. By the second week of the display, the crowds were overwhelming. Police had to redirect traffic. The HOA's phone line crashed from complaints and prank calls. Packages went missing. Noise echoed past midnight. And while the homeowner kept everything legally compliant, the neighborhood was reaching its breaking point. Karen saw her chance. She began framing the issue differently, not as an HOA violation, but as a public safety crisis. She attended city council meetings, waving petitions signed by frustrated residents. She described Meadowbrook Pines as a neighborhood under siege. She called for intervention, claiming the show had become an environmental hazard due to light pollution. But her passion came across as hysteria. Footage of her impassioned speeches circulated online, spliced between clips of dancing snowmen and joyful kids. The internet had already chosen its hero, and it wasn't her. Still. She refused to quit. On December 23rd, she made her boldest move yet, filing for a temporary injunction against the display. It was a legal gamble, one that could cost the HOA thousands in fees, but she didn't care. Her goal wasn't justice, it was revenge. The motion went before a county judge the next morning, and for a moment it looked like she might win. The judge expressed concern over traffic congestion and crowd control. Karen smiled for the first time in weeks. But then the homeowner's attorney, calm, prepared, and armed with permits, presented everything. The inspection reports, the safety measures, the signed approvals from city officials, even statements from local businesses about the positive economic impact of the display. The judge dismissed the injunction immediately. Karen's face, according to one witness, turned a shade of red usually reserved for malfunctioning Christmas bulbs. That evening, the show went on, bigger than ever. The lights burned brighter, the music louder. The crowd roared when a giant LED message appeared across the house. Merry Christmas, Meadowbrook Pines, and thank you, HOA. It was over the top, but it was perfect. Karen's fury reached a fever pitch. She sent angry emails deep into the night, accusing everyone, the board, the city, the police, of corruption. Her words grew erratic, paranoid. She began keeping notes of suspicious activity, including children caroling near her driveway. The stress consumed her. By Christmas Eve, she looked like a ghost of the woman who once ruled Meadowbrook Pines with an iron clipboard. Meanwhile, the homeowner's house became the unofficial heart of the town's holiday spirit. People left thank you cards. A local school choir performed under the lights. Even nearby neighborhoods began putting up more decorations. Inspired by the Defiance. For the first time, Meadowbrook Pines was alive. Imperfect, messy, joyful. And for the first time, Karen found herself utterly alone. On Christmas night. As the final show reached its crescendo, music swelling, colors pulsing in every hue imaginable, Karen stood at her window, surrounded by the hum of distant laughter. The noise she once despised now echoed with something she couldn't admit to herself. Longing. The crowds cheered one last time as the lights spelled out Happy Holidays. Everyone. Snow began to fall, coating the lawns in quiet white. And just as the show ended, a single spotlight illuminated that framed HOA letter, still hanging proudly on the porch. The symbol of everything that had started it all. By morning, the story had gone national. Talk shows mentioned it. Influencers visited for selfies. The homeowner was invited to speak at a community festival. And Karen? She became a punchline, a cautionary tale of what happens when control meets. Christmas spirit. But if there was one thing Karen Lathrop never did, it was admit defeat. In the new year. As decorations came down and the neighborhood thawed, Karen began to rebuild her image. She told herself she'd been misunderstood, that she was merely protecting community standards. Behind the scenes, however, a new plan was forming, one that would target not just one house, but the entire idea of unauthorized displays. Because if she couldn't win the Battle of Christmas, she intended to win the War of Meadowbrook Pines itself. And in the months to come, she'd push that mission so far that it would change the neighborhood forever and expose secrets no one saw coming.